जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय suggested for today for us to discuss is chapter 9, text number 25 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 9, Bhagavad Gita, is known as the most confidential knowledge. So something very, very special about this chapter. Of course, we understand that the entire Bhagavad Gita is special in every way, but this knowledge is, we can say, kept very sacred within the center of the text. 18 chapters, so the 9th chapter is right in the center of the text. You can say it's protected on both sides and gets into very beautiful devotional aspects of our path. This is text number 25. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Yanti Deva Vrata Devan.
Yanti Deva Vrata Devan.
Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrataha.
Pitri Yanti Pitri Vrataha.
Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja.
Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja.
Yanti Madhya Jinopimam.
Yanti Madhya Jinopimam.
Would anyone like to chant the verse?
Yanti Deva Vrata Deva.
Yanti Deva Vrata Deva.
Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrata.
Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrataha.
Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja.
Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja.
Yanti Madhya Jinopima.
Yanti Madhya Jinopima.
Yanti Deva Vrata Deva.
Yanti Deva Vrata Deva.
Yanti Pitri Vrataha.
Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrataha.
Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja.
Yanti Bhuteja.
Yanti Madhya Jinopima.
Yanti Madhya Jinopima. Okay, anyone else? Okay. Yeah, yes, please, if anyone would like to chant. Okay. So thank you all so much. So we will read now the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Those who worship the demigods will take birth among the demigods. Those who worship the ancestors go to the ancestors. Those who worship ghosts and spirits will take birth among such beings, and those who worship me will live with me. Purport. If one has any desire to go to the moon, the sun, or any other planet, one can attain the desired destination by following specific Vedic principles recommended for that purpose, such as the process technically known as Darsha Purnamasi. These are vividly described in the fruitive activities portion of the Vedas, which recommends a specific worship of demigods situated on different heavenly planets. Similarly, one can attain the Pita planets by performing a specific yajna. Similarly, one can go to many ghostly planets and become a yaksha, raksha, or pishacha. Pishacha worship is called black arts or black magic. There are many men who practice this black art, and they think that it is spiritualism, but such activities are completely materialistic. Similarly, a pure devotee who worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead only achieves the planets of Vaikuntha and Krishna Loka without a doubt. It is very easy to understand through this important verse that if by simply worshipping the demigods one can achieve the heavenly planets, or by worshipping the Pitas achieve the Pita planets, or by practicing the black arts achieve the ghostly planets, why can the pure devotee not achieve the planet of Krishna or Vishnu? Unfortunately, many people have no information of these sublime planets where Krishna and Vishnu live, and because they do not know of them, they fall down. Even the impersonalists fall down from the Brahmajyoti. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore distributing sublime information to the entire human society, to the effect that by simply chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, one can become perfect in this life and go back home, back to Godhead. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatari. So nice to see everyone here this evening, and thank you once again for the opportunity to share from the Bhagavad Gita. And I'd like to, before beginning, just sincerely request and seek everyone's blessings and well wishes so that what we share tonight can be something that is inspiring, is relevant, is faithful to what Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual teachers have shared. So, this verse is quite interesting because Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that we have different systems of worship. There are different means of worship that can happen in one's path. And actually, the options are quite diverse. And similarly, the results of these different types of worship are quite diverse. And Krishna is detailing here to Arjuna that just as a law of nature, those who worship in a particular way, their destination will correspond with that. And there is such emphasis in the Bhagavad Gita placed upon our consciousness, our day-to-day consciousness. And it is shared that the state of being that one meditates upon at the end of life will determine their destination at the end of life. So in this way, they say, there's one saying, where attention goes, energy flows. So in this way, it's very natural that if we're dwelling or meditating or contemplating a particular spiritual being or a particular spiritual destination, or the ancestors, or the ghosts, that very naturally in this way our consciousness will shift accordingly, and we will receive that destination as a law of nature. So, it's very interesting because sometimes we hear that all paths lead to the same destination. This is a very popular understanding. And what we can say, I don't want to be alarmist or anything like that, what we can say is that Srila Prabhupada makes very clear. He says the test for one's spiritual path is how well, how nicely that person is developing love for God. And if that person, by their spiritual tradition, whatever it may be, if they're able to develop love for God, and therefore develop love for all of God's parts and parcels, develop love for everyone, then Prabhupada actually said that that path is considered perfect. His words, very strong in this way. So we should make no mistake that, those who are sincerely practicing some other religious faith, something like that, not to say that they're misled or anything like that, quite the contrary. But by the same token, we can't be overly broad in understanding that all paths lead to the same destination. Because here it's quite clear, Krishna says, that if we're worshiping in a way that is not directed toward the Supreme, if we're worshiping in a way that is mixed in some way, is focused upon the demigods, is focused upon the ancestors, or is focused upon ghostly type beings, bhutas, that in this way our destination will be affected accordingly. So we can see that our consciousness determines so much, not only in our ultimate sense, but even in our day-to-day life. The way that we are conscious of Krishna determines how that day goes, right? So Srila Prabhupada explains, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. This is the primary rule and regulation of Krishna consciousness. All of the other rules and regulations are considered to be in service of this primary rule. So we have our regulative principles, we have various other rules and regulations, but those ultimately function so that we can become more aware of Krishna, that we can be more deeply in remembrance of Krishna. So in this way that our consciousness depends upon, our consciousness depends upon our own remembrance. And Krishna gives so many beautiful ways that we can remember him. So even these other types of paths, Krishna is involved. So Krishna shares in Bhagavad Gita here, actually just a few verses before this one. He states, Ye pyanya devata bhakta yajante shradhayan vitaha te bhimam eva konteya yajantya vidhi purvakam. Those who are devotees of other gods and who worship them with faith actually worship only me, O son of Kunti, but they do so in a wrong way. So Krishna is actually on some level receiving this worship, because Krishna is the source of all of the demigods. Krishna is able to endow that faith actually to a person who's worshiping the demigods in a particular way. But that worship may happen in such a way that is not most pleasing to Krishna, we can say. Demigods can be very easily pleased, also very easily upset, very easily angered. So one example that's given is that Lord Shiva, one of his names is Ashutosh, and this means that one who is easily pleased, but also easily angered. Of course, we respect very much Lord Shiva as the greatest of Vaishnavas. So there's no conflict there, but at the same time, it's the attitude with which we respect the demigods that is very significant. So Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, the divisions of faith, actually also details this in a way that is very relevant to this verse. So he says, men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, Those in the mode of passion worship the demons, and those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. So we have the three gunas, sattva guna, raja guna, and tama guna, goodness, passion, and ignorance. And of course, as conditioned souls going through this life, we're always experiencing some mixture of these modes. We're aspiring to the platform of goodness, sattva guna, because it's most favorable for our spiritual life. It's not the end goal. It's not in and of itself our goal. But mode of goodness is considered to be like the smoothest runway for the plane to take off. Rajaguna or Tamaguna would be like a very rocky, bumpy path that doesn't really enable the plane to take off properly. So we do ultimately aspire to transcend the three modes of nature. So even worship in the mode of goodness, it's very, very respectable, but it is not the supreme goal. This is not our ultimate goal. So we have different types of worship that can happen, even within the realm of worshiping the demigods, for example. So there's karma kanda, and we can even worship the Supreme Lord in this attitude. Unfortunately, that would be comparable to going up to. This is a material example, but I hope it's illustrative in some way. Going up to a multi-billionaire and saying, "Excuse me, dear sir, can I please have $10?" Something like that, right? Because yes, if we worship Krishna with some materialistic mindset, Krishna, please give me this, let me have this, make me this, give me this position, let me be this and that, let this person do, this for me, or come to me in this way, or make business with, whatever. We can make so many requests. I mean, let the Lakers win, whatever it is. So if we worship Krishna in this way, Krishna is entirely capable of giving us all of these things because he is the source. He's Bhagavan, the source of all opulences. But at the same time, we're actually really losing the plot if we're approaching the Lord in this spirit, because he has so much more to give us, more than we can even imagine. It's explained actually that there's mercy and there's grace. So we use these terms sometimes a little bit interchangeably. But one very nice distinction, I believe it was Radhanath Swami Maharaj, I'm trying to remember who said this, but that mercy comes when there's something that we know we need, something that we're seeking, and it comes. That's an example of mercy. But grace is when there's something that we don't even know that we need. There's something beyond what we even understand in our own life, and then that comes unexpectedly, divinely, beautifully. So Krishna has so much grace to give to his devotees, but if we're just seeing Krishna as an order supplier, then we're missing the point. And so demigod worship often happens in a way it's called karma kanda. It's worshiping in a way that material blessings, material gifts arise from that type of worship. And it doesn't necessarily indicate a deeper level of devotion. It's kind of transactional. Right. So then there may be karma kanda going on. There's jnana kanda. Jnana refers to spiritual knowledge. So in this way, worshiping in a way that is based upon kind of speculative knowledge, mental speculation, trying to gain a lot of spiritual knowledge, with the intention of gaining power or seeking liberation. So Jnana Kanda usually implies liberation, liberationist idea. Okay, I'm going to gain all this spiritual knowledge so that I can be free of the miseries, of this world and be liberated. So yes, on some level, we aspire for liberation also. We aspire for liberation from the cycle of birth and death, but at the same time, that's not the ultimate goal. So then there's Upasana Kanda. So that refers to bhakti. It can refer to demigod worship, but that term can refer to worship of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this way, this is more of a devotional path. And it's less about what we want, it's more about what the Lord wants. So Krishna, one of his names is Rishikesh. So he is the master of the senses. So we wish not to please our own senses, we wish to please the senses, transcendental, supreme senses of Krishna. In that way, automatically, everything is satisfied. So Srila Prabhupada gives the analogy that by worshiping Krishna, it's like watering the root of a tree. So automatically, all of the branches and leaves and flowers are nourished fully. Or another analogy is by giving food to the stomach. So in this sense, worshiping Krishna is like placing food in the stomach. Otherwise, if we're just trying to satisfy different agendas here, there, and everywhere, we will not actually satisfy even those things, because Krishna is at the center of all. Everything emanates from him. So if we try to eat some food with our hand or something like that, nothing's going to happen. We're not going to be nourished. So ultimately, by serving Krishna, all aspects of existence are nourished. So, let's see. So much of the types of worship that we may enter into, as Srila Prabhupada explains here, many people have no information of these sublime planets where Krishna and Vishnu live. So we may not have an understanding of prayojana. We may not have an understanding of the goal. So in the path of bhakti, we understand there's sambandha, which is relationship. There's abhideya, which is the process by which we cultivate and enter into that relationship. And then there's prayojana, which is the goal of that process. So in our case, of course, it varies a little bit, subtle ways, because Krishna is unlimited, so devotees can have so many different ways of relating to and connecting to Krishna. But we can say overall our goal is Krishna prema, to develop love for Krishna. So if we are not aware of that goal, not that we preemptively assume that we are there, right? It's a gradual process, and it's quite an elevated process. But at the same time, being aware of the goal is very important. Just like if you program a ship to go in a certain direction, if those coordinates are just a little bit off, over the course of a long voyage, that ship will end up in some other territory. But if the destination is very clear and the goal is very clear, then we will have eventual success by the mercy of Krishna and his devotees. So this is very important to understand, that the goal needs to be there. And then the next part is that our identity plays a very big role in the type of worship that we may enter into. This is why self-realization, we hear this term self-realization a lot, but of course we're also encouraged to cultivate God realization, right? We want to understand more and more about Krishna, right? Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila, his names, forms, qualities, and pastimes. This will really enliven our souls and remind us of our ultimate purpose, the more we can learn about Krishna. Otherwise, we will have, we can have different identities, different understanding of ourselves. So the more we learn about Krishna, the more we learn about ourselves as his parts and parcels, as his aspiring servants. But the more we learn about ourselves, we also can learn more about Krishna, because Krishna is seated within the heart as Paramatma, as the super soul. Krishna is known also in this sense as Paramatma, known as Chaitya Guru. So Krishna is guiding us from within. So if we're earnestly, honestly trying to understand more about ourselves, our purpose in this life, who we are at a deeper level, then also, by Krishna's grace, we will be guided to teachers, we will be guided to teachings and practices that will help us to come closer to Krishna. So if we have just some identity that, I am the son of my father, who is the son of this and is the son of that, if we're focused on our family lineage, of course we're going to worship the ancestors. What more do we know? What more information do we have? So yes, and by worshiping in this way, it's understood that we will attain the residence of the ancestors, right? So it's a material thing. And similarly, if we're very bewildered in life and we just feel that we're wandering this world like a zombie, like a ghoul, something like that, or if we're into some very negative kind of bewildering tamasic sorts of ideas or ideologies, then yeah, of course we're going to try to engage in some of these, what Prabhupada's calling here, black arts. trying to please different beings for different things. But in that way, we also become distracted from the ultimate goal, and we can enter into some very negative frames of mind. And so Krishna explains here that it's not a question of disrespecting the elders or disrespecting the ancestors, but they're not the ultimate objects of our worship. And in fact, by engaging in Krishna conscious activities, we honor our ancestors to the highest degree. Actually, in the pastime of Nrsingadev and Prahlad Maharaj, of course, Lord Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu, who is the father of Prahlad. Prahlad is a great devotee, young boy. And Lord Nrsingadev kills Hiranyakashipu, the father, who is very demonic, who was trying to kill Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad, because he's a pure devotee, he has this compassionate heart even for his father who is trying to kill him. And he says to Lord Nrsingadev, what will happen to my father? Will he be okay? Will he be punished? And Lord Nrsingadev replies, actually, Prahlad, by your devotion, by your bhakti, you have liberated not only your father, but 14 generations of your family are uplifted because you have expressed such beautiful devotion. You are a devotee. So in this way, 14 generations of your family are being uplifted by this. So there's no question that by practicing Krishna consciousness, we're not properly honoring our ancestors. Yes, so there are these different types of worship, and then Krishna explains. Here we go. So then let's focus on what our true identity is. We may identify with so many things, so many temporary things here, there, and everywhere. I, me, mine, right? So, but if our deepest identity is, I'm a lawyer, are we going to go to lawyer loka at the end of our life? What does it mean? It will keep us stuck in the cycle. Of course, it's fine. We have temporary designations, but we have to understand also that these are called upadhis. These are temporary designations. They may serve us in some way, some immediate way as we're going through life. We can't necessarily all be, wandering mendicants serving Krishna. We have to occupy certain stations in society. But at the same time, at the end of the day, we want to go to sleep and wake up remembering Krishna, 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 remembering that our ultimate purpose is to connect with Krishna. So Krishna shares, actually on that point of identity, I'll just share one verse here. This is from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. These are the words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself. This is coming from Madhya Lila. So his identity, he spoke very beautifully. Naham vipro na cha narapatir napi vaishyo na shudro naham varni na cha grihapatir no vanasto yatir va kintu prodyan nikila paramananda purnamrita der gopi bartuhu parakamalayor das das anudas. So the translation of this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, I am not a Brahmana, I am not a Kshatriya, I am not a Vaishya or a Shudra, nor am I a Brahmachari, a householder, a Vanaprastha, or a sannyasi. I identify myself only as the servant of the servant of the servant of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. He is like an ocean of nectar, and he is the cause of universal transcendental bliss. He is always existing with brilliance. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's beautiful example of identifying on the deepest level that which is eternal, and identifying only ultimately as the servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Krishna. Otherwise, we may get so caught up in different designations, and that will inform the way that we worship. So ultimately, we want to take the teachings given by Srila Prabhupada, given by the Acharyas, and put those into practice. That will show us who we are. Kadamba Kanana Swami, who just very recently left this world, he shared very beautifully that he very much loved to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. And he shared that Chaitanya Charitamrita shows us who we are. So it's very interesting because Chaitanya Charitamrita is such a special scripture. Gaura Lila is so special, so relevant to us as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. So what it shows us is that in the immediate sense, what do we read about in Chaitanya Charitamrita? We read about devotees. spending time together, having loving exchanges, sharing kirtan together, sharing prasad together. So in the immediate sense, it's showing us who we are, but also in the eternal sense, it's showing us who we are. We are aspiring to serve in this way, to share the love that has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada, by the devotees, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his mercy in Kali Yuga. This process has been made so easy, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Then in that way we're immediately making contact with the supreme goal. Sometimes we hear in Krishna consciousness that the means and the end are actually absolute, right? So we have the goal, prayojana, to connect with Lord Krishna. But as we're chanting, that's we can say it's part of our abhideya, right? It's part of the process by which we're pursuing the goal. But the reality, the spiritual reality, is that Krishna's name is the same as Krishna himself. So in this way, Krishna is perfectly manifest. We are connecting in that moment. It's just a question of our own understanding, our own conditioning. We have imperfect senses. We have a tendency to make mistakes. We have a tendency to be illusioned. We have a fault-finding tendency. All of these things can be impediments on the path, but they're not the ultimate impediment. The mercy of the devotees is much stronger than any of these things. Srila Prabhupada, in one letter, I would like to find it, I'll try to find it, but Srila Prabhupada in one letter says, I can kick out all of these obstacles in an instant. So, yes, we have imperfect senses. Yes, we have different types of attachments from lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, but we should never think that these things are actually going to impede us. That's actually our ego speaking. When we say, I'm so fallen, I'm so disqualified, I'm never going to make it. Yes, on some level we may feel that way, but we should always have confidence in how wonderful Krishna's mercy is, how wonderful the mercy of the devotees is. So even if we're afflicted with imperfect senses, even if I take off my glasses, I can't even see anyone's face, right? We still have all of this mercy coming our way. And that spiritual knowledge doesn't just depend upon our material senses. That enters the ear, takes root in the heart. So in this way, attention is what's most important. As we said in the beginning, where attention goes, energy flows. So that's why inattentive chanting is considered to be, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur shares that this is the root of all of the other offenses. Because if we're not properly appreciating, like for example, if we all took a trip together and went to the Grand Canyon, something like that, some beautiful place. But we all just were reading the newspaper the whole time, and we never even looked at the Grand Canyon. We won't have any kind of experience. We won't appreciate the beauty. So in this way, Krishna's beauty is fully manifest. Krishna's teachings are here for us. Srila Prabhupada's made all these things available. But if we don't stay open to take these things in, to take advantage of what's flowing, what's being given to us, then yes, it will be a longer process. So all we can really try to do, all we can really take credit for is just showing up and trying to take in what is so mercifully being given. So how do we do this? We do this by Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam, by hearing, chanting, remembering the Lord, associating with the devotees, right? We have these different limbs of bhakti, right? So we have the holy name, we have the holy places where we can visit, or we can at least hear about these places. And also Srila Prabhupada says that wherever Krishna is being worshipped, wherever the holy name is being chanted, that is like the Dham, it's like Vrindavan. We have deity worship. The deities so mercifully appear as the Archa Vigraha form. They're here for us, that we can make offerings to them. Of course, Krishna doesn't require our offerings. Krishna is fully satisfied, Atmaram, self-satisfied. But the deities appear in this very merciful way that with our own, even with our material senses, right, we can make offerings, we can engage, we can serve, and yet this process is fully transcendental, fully spiritual. We have other devotees who can support us and encourage us on the path. We have Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, all of these beautiful scriptures. So there's so much that we've been given, and there's so much for us to take shelter of. And in this way, gradually we're discovering our identity, and we're discovering also the prime means of worship. Particularly in Kali Yuga, what's emphasized is kirtan, congregational chanting, coming together and chanting the holy names of the Lord. It's actually said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Kali Yuga is considered to be worshipable because we can so easily come together during this age and develop love for Krishna. So in this way, we're trying to engage in kirtan, we're trying to engage in all of these beautiful processes of bhakti. And this is showing us how we can worship, and the worship is showing us who we are. And in this way, we are receiving all of the information, all of the encouragement, all of the knowledge that we require, all of the mercy that we so desperately require to perfect our lives in this way. So this is something that happens by the mercy of the devotees. So what we can share here, 10th chapter, text number 9. Krishna shares, Machita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantaschamam nityam tushanti charamanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. So there are so many ways for us to engage in Krishna's service, and so many ways for us to be together in Sangha and enliven each other, and to remind each other of the supreme goal, to remind each other of our deeper identity. So there's no limit. There's really no limit. One can serve Krishna using all of their own individual nature, their own gifts, right? So Ramachandra Prabhu may be inclined toward management, toward helping other devotees to engage in service. Jai Draupadi Mataji likes to cook and likes to encourage devotees in a very personal, nice way. Padmodar Prabhu, I don't know if he's here, he likes to do puja. So there's so many different ways, right? And you can use all of your own individual gifts. Some devotees like to do art. Some devotees like to use their creativity. Some devotees like to raise their families and do that as a service to Krishna. All of these things are perfectly valid and perfectly acceptable to Krishna. What he wants is our love. So he doesn't require, the only thing that Krishna doesn't already have that we can give him is our love. And we have that free will. So it's very beautiful and very pleasing to Krishna when we decide to give our love to him in this way and to aspire to serve him, to offer back what has been given. So Krishna assures us that our destination is certain if we're remembering him and thinking of him. So how do we do that? So it's not something that suddenly at the end of life, Hare Krishna, it's not something that suddenly at the end of life, magically, we're fully absorbed in samadhi and thinking of Krishna. This is where our sadhana comes in. This is where our day-to-day hearing and chanting and associating with devotees comes in. It's a progressive process, so that hopefully by Krishna's grace, at the end of our life, we're already so much accustomed to thinking of Krishna, to remembering Krishna. And we are tested throughout our lives in so many ways. Are we able to remember Krishna in times of distress, in times of happiness? Sometimes we experience this in different ways. In times of distress, we may become so angry or so upset toward the Supreme. Or we may just completely be overwhelmed and forget. And others, it's the other way around. In times of happiness, they feel, okay, I'm totally fine. I don't have to think about anything spiritual right now, right? Or times of happiness are when people feel grateful. Oh, Lord, right? So in this way, we're trying to cultivate remembrance that spans all of the different circumstances of life. Having passed through all circumstances, one simply remembers the lotus-eyed Lord. One is considered to be pure under all circumstances. That's one mantra. So in that way, we're trying to cultivate this ongoing remembrance. So this is why Krishna says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam me vashyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this, because you are my very dear friend. So, in this life, we try to arrange our life in such a way that we can remember Krishna, think of him, and he makes himself so available in so many different ways. And then in this way, going back to our original verse, as there are so many different destinations, so many different means of worship, if we simply remember Krishna, try to become his devotee, try to associate with the devotees and serve, and just find so many beautiful ways to remember him as we go through the course of our life. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. To accept what is favorable. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, he says this, that we should accept what is most favorable for our bhakti, for our devotion, and reject what is unfavorable. So in this way, we're just trying to mold our life in this way. And then Krishna assures us, you will come to me. So, okay, we'll stop here. Just want to leave time for any reflections, questions, comments, thoughts that anyone has. So thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
I had a question. I think it's relevant because of your work in the hospital. So we recognize that practitioners of, say, the Western theological traditions, and Prabhupada has said that's their kind of, they have no concept of God. And so here, but they're worshiping, but they don't know exactly who they're worshiping. And also in the three Western traditions, they don't follow the regular principle that the Bhagavatam says in the famous Niprititashara verse, they're Pashuganai. They're killing the soul by the fact that they're eating meat. So my question is, what is the destination for those who have no idea really of God, but still are trying to worship God?
Yeah, wonderful question, and it's I appreciate the challenge. What we find is that there are different systems of spiritual knowledge that are given to different peoples at different times, right? Desha Kalapatra, different places, times, and circumstances. And sometimes that may be what is most favorable for that particular we can say, combination of time, place, and circumstance, right? So, like for example, if we look at the Bible, and we have 10 commandments there, right? Thou shalt not kill, which is also related to the question of eating meat. Srila Prabhupada very much emphasized when he would have dialogues with Christian theologians and so on, he very much emphasized this as a sticking point of, okay, well, if it says thou should not kill, right? But then again, why should this be mentioned in the first place? Thou shalt not kill. There's a question of, if you're saying thou shalt not kill, it's obvious that it's a very basic type of understanding that's being given. Of course, within the Christian tradition, or within all of these, Judeo-Christian or Islam, so on and so forth, there are teachings that are going deeper. There are mystical teachings that are there, which start to look a lot more like bhakti, start to look a lot more like devotion, in the sense that they are emphasizing a personal relationship. They're emphasizing understanding more about the qualities of God. So it's to be understood that even within these traditions, it may not be a uniform destination, or it may not be a uniform kind of understanding that is being cultivated. I think a lot of the time, it's a question of depth, the degree to which the person is able to enter into the faith, whether they're more interested in the form or the essence. Because the form of the faith may have certain things, certain almost externals, right? Almost external components of the faith that are dwelt upon very strongly. But then there's essence, and it's a question of people's guna, people's nature also. Sometimes people are very much essence seekers. You meet people within all different faiths. Some of them are just very, very thirsty for spiritual knowledge. And they will be guided to deeper sources of knowledge, whether it's in their own faith or whether it's in another tradition. But then the question of destination, it can be said that it has to do with the level of that person's faith, the level of that person's ongoing devotion. Again, the remembrance, right? So I grew up in the Jewish faith. And we would go to the temple like twice a year, basically, twice a year. Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Yes. So, and in all faiths we find this kind of practice where people are maybe just minimally involved, right? But then undoubtedly you can meet people within all religious faiths who are very saintly by nature, people who are very, very deep practitioners of their tradition. And such souls are very rare. But this, to me, indicates, it may be an exception, to the rule, but it indicates what Srila Prabhupada explained about how if one is practicing their faith sincerely, then it's perfect. So there's always a question of the level of depth, but my own understanding is that, and I hope that's aligned with what Srila Prabhupada has shared, but if one has practiced their faith sincerely and has gotten to that level by which they can attain love for God, which is a very high bar, then that faith is considered perfect.
Very wonderful answer, thank you. A couple of thoughts in that. Just one quick story. I also grew up in that same Jewish tradition. When my wife and I were married in the Hare Krishna Temple, 55th Street, so I have some Orthodox relatives, Orthodox Jews. So of course we invited them. What's an Orthodox Jew? But one Orthodox couple came. So when the wedding was over, I said, Uncle Julius, what's an Orthodox Jew doing in the Hare Krishna Temple? And he said, I'm a student of the Kabbalah, and therefore I respect your philosophy. So this reinforces the point you're making. And the other thought that came to me is, in the Gajendra Leela, Gajendra, when he's attacked by the crocodile, he doesn't remember who God is, but he prays to God, and therefore God appears. Therefore, as you said, if they're very sincere, then there's still hope because God is going to take more steps towards them than they take towards them. And the final thing is, for at least in the Christian tradition, they focus a lot on Jesus Christ. And one God sister once asked Prabhupada, actually, I don't even know if she's initiated. She said, Prabhupada, I can't remember Krishna at the time of death, but what if I remember you? And Prabhupada sort of very softly said, yes, that's all right. So that if they remember Jesus Christ. And I also heard, now I've never read this, so this is, I don't know how authoritative it is, but Prabhupada once I was told, Prabhupada once said that they remembered Jesus and they go to the planet of Jesus. But I know Prabhupada did say Jesus came from the spiritual world.
Right. Thank you so much for this. Is very valuable. I love the example that you shared about your Orthodox uncle, because it goes to show that this is an important rule, and we'll observe this. You can observe it practically if you go throughout the world, interact with different people. Those who are increasingly spiritually advanced, they actually become more broad-minded rather than more narrow-minded. They become more open to recognizing the essence and the beauty in different traditions.
I just add one other quick story. When I was in charge of Lake Huntington, I got a call. He wanted to come. He said, I'm studying the Hare Krishnas. Can I come and spend 3 days with you? He turned out to be an Orthodox Jew. And after 3 days, he said to me, my own faith has been enhanced by being with you people.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Bruce. I thought the question dying in the hospital. If that person is following XYZ faith, right? What happens to them? And it was a very wonderful discussion. What you mentioned is very true. If somehow we are thinking about the God, then we achieve the God. We don't know. Who the God is, but God definitely knows that. But the question over here comes over here that many times people live the life the way it is. I am we can quote so many different examples. Follow faith but living an irreligious life, right? So what would happen to that? And I mean, I was while this discussion was going on, right? That it depends upon the mode of consciousness that we have cultivated through this life. Urdhavam gachanti sattvasta madhye tishtanti rajasa adhoguna vrittista jaganya adhoguna vrittis, I mean jaganya guna adhoguna vrittista jaganya guna. I think they follow. And there is one other thing also like that people in the mode of goodness, they go to the, I think you read, right? That they go to the planets of demigods, and then people in the mode of, I mean, so is irrespective of following or believing, what did they do actually in their life, right? I mean, following certain faith, that's very appreciated, but they lived a life in a mode of ignorance. They're definitely going to go to the mode of ignorance now, right?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I can say because I believe in certain kind of doctrines, certain books or certain philosophies, and I believe I could kill everybody. Now I'm killing so many people and thinking that I am going to heaven. Doesn't take me to the heaven because I believe that book.
Yeah.
What did I do actually? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't use my. So I think the how does someone lives his or her life? That's what is most important thing.
Yes, definitely.
Right? I mean, so not everybody following all the. I mean, as you mentioned in the beginning, not all the paths lead to the same goal.
Yeah.
Right? But so like in following the certain faith, and what if the faith is saying nonsense? Right? What would be the solution?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is very good points and very good questions.
Historically, we have the example that during the war between the Christians and the Muslims, the Christians felt that it was proper to kill, and there was a time, I think, during the Renaissance period when the Christian priests were torturing people to get them to accept Christ. So they're following their faith, but look at where they're going.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of examples, right? Examples. I mean, in all faiths, people misinterpret the scriptures to suit their own material agenda, and surely, that there's a lack of sincerity when that's going on, right? There's a lack of sincerity because if the scripture is being twisted and turned, and we can draw any message out of the scripture if we're insincerely trying to do so, it can happen. So there's a question of
even with our scriptures.
Absolutely, sure.
Actually, more in our scripture. If you know and if you commit offense, it's a problem. Because you can tell Jamraj, if somebody goes to Jamraj, like all will go to Jamraj. Right? Person say, if somebody says I didn't read the rule, he will be getting less punished. Anyhow, there is an example in the Mahabharata that there was a Duryodhana and Yudhishthira were being tested for the being prince, being coronated. So there was somebody killed somebody.
Yeah.
So there were 4 people involved. There was a Brahmana, there was a Vaishya, Kshatriya, and a Shudra. So Yudhishthira Maharaj said, Brahman should, I don't know how to punish Brahmana, so Dronacharya should decide who should be, or Bhishma Pitama should decide about the Brahmana. For Kshatriya, he should be punished for 25 years of imprisonment. The Vaishya should be punished 10 years, and the Shudra should be punished 5 years. So same thing, if you say that I don't know the rule, it's okay. But Ramraja would know that you are Hindu, you're supposed to know the rule.
Yeah. So anyway, with all this, I just wanted to briefly mention, with all of this misinterpretation that can happen within different faiths, this is why we have the check and balance system of Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, right? And it should be genuine Guru. Of course, there are gurus out there who can be misleading, right? But Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, this prevents us from that kind of gross misinterpretation, twisting and turning it however we like. Yes?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful lecture. Very soothing and beautiful. I just have a question. Like Mahaprabhu said, this patient dying in the hospital, that's
Yeah.
why you put in chaplain. And then suppose the dying person is of Christian origin or Christian, not so religious, but Christian.
Yes.
When you go, how do you talk to them? You want
Oh.
to talk in Sanskrit or Krishna? What do you talk to them?
Okay, yeah, and I did want to mention, you know, Mayapur Chandra Prabhu was sharing this nice point about how, you know, if someone has acted a certain way in their life, how can it be that, you know, at the time of death they can suddenly, you know, go back or can have, you know, the right consciousness? But what I can say just from being there with people is that, and this is a little heavy to say, but like death is extremely sobering for people. It's Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, you know, I am time, but it's also sometimes translated, I am death, right? So in this way, Krishna does appear to people at the end of life in the form of death sometimes. So in this way, you do see people have massive changes of heart, and it's not a universal experience, but you see it a lot. People who maybe a few days before were angry and rude and not, you know, but also that has to do with anxiety that we feel at the end of life. It's a very human thing. But then you also see at the end of life, some people have very big changes of heart where suddenly they are feeling a lot more connected to the Supreme, or they may want to make amends with people and apologize and so on and so forth. This is a very beautiful thing. So to answer your question in terms of how we might talk to people, right? You talk in terms of the universal experience of, you know, so what is it that you're feeling right now? Hearing from them, and they may express all types of regrets, all types of, you know, I wish that my family was here. Where is everybody? You know, sometimes it's like that, unfortunately. And what's coming out there is that this person is a spirit soul. This person has had an experience passing through this life, and now that life is coming to an end, and they're wondering about their identity. They're wondering about what is most important, sometimes spirituality in a very broad way can be referred as what is most meaningful and most significant for someone. So in this way, at the end of life, someone is trying to make contact with what is most meaningful and most significant, and quite often it is their faith. So we talk about the qualities of God, how God, you know, the opulences, the different characteristics of God. So of course we're not saying, you know, Venum Konvanta Maravind, you know, we're not saying that he wears a peacock feather. So we're fortunate to have this information in our scriptures, but at the same time, they may say God is kind, God is loving. I remember a time in my life when I was going through a hard time and I prayed, and at that time I really felt very soothed. I felt like I wasn't alone. And then we can say, oh, so are you feeling that right now? Is there some way that you can connect right now and feel that when you're having difficult times? And so you don't have to feel afraid, you know, like that, so on and so forth. So we talk in a universal way, but we certainly try to emphasize God consciousness, because as Krishna says, if one is remembering the Supreme at the hour of death, then that will obviously benefit that person in a tremendous way. So, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Deena Bandhu. So, as wonderful talk.